for Sarah's future. Before Sarah's important job interview, I decided to hang up on her ex-boyfriend. He was the one who had caused her to lose her pregnancies 4 times, and I thought I was helping her. But after she got the job, she found out that because I had hung up on him, he had blocked her number. She was really angry with me. In the end, when I wasn't expecting it, she pushed me into the river, and I drowned. She yelled, "You stupid fool! You ruined my love life! I want you to go to hell!" When I woke up, I was back on the day of the interview. This time, I didn't hesitate. I answered the call and handed the phone to Sarah right before she went into the interview room. Then, she completely ignored the person telling her it was time to go in and ran out of the room towards her ex-boyfriend without a second thought. The signal for the exam to start rang, and Sarah, with tears in her eyes, didn't listen to the teacher trying to stop her. She grabbed the umbrella from my hands and ran straight out into the heavy rain. People around us started whispering, "Oh my God, what's she doing? It's almost time to go in." Someone else said, "Sarah is probably the best student from the written exam. She's giving up on the interview. This job is really hard to get." Hearing the whispers and watching Sarah disappear into the rain, I finally understood what had happened. I had really been given another chance. A guy standing next to me asked, "Hey, aren't you childhood friends with Sarah? Did something urgent come up? This job is so hard to get. She just walked away and you didn't try to stop her." I waved him off dismissively. "Not really close. I don't get involved in other people's business." Not interfering in other people's lives was a lesson I had learned the hard way before. In the end, Sarah leaving was seen as her giving up on the interview. Even though she had the best score on the written exam, she had no chance at the job. This had happened exactly like this before. At the most important moment of her interview, Sarah's unreliable ex-boyfriend called her. For her future, I had hung up on him right away, hoping she could focus on the interview. But after she got the job, the first thing she did was try to get back together with her ex. I had no idea that when she called him, she found out he had blocked her. The only message she got was, "Sarah, since you won't answer my calls, we should never see each other again." Sarah blamed me for hanging up, thinking I had made her lose her true love. She asked to meet me by the river, her face angry as she screamed at me, "Tom, who told you to get involved in my business, you jerk?" Before I could say anything, she pushed me into the river, yelling, "You stupid fool, you ruined my love life, I want you to go to hell." I was carried away by the fast river, trying to stay afloat, but in the end I couldn't. I couldn't breathe, my lungs burned with water and everything went dark. That was how my life ended, so sadly. But then, I woke up again, back at the moment when Sarah's ex had called her. Looking at the vibrating phone and Sarah, who was about to go into the interview room, I answered the call without thinking and called out to stop her. I didn't know what was said on the other end, but Sarah looked unsure. Yet, in the end, as if she had made up her mind, she definitely gave up the interview, took the umbrella, and ran off. She seemed to have completely forgotten about me standing there. I just watched her go, not stopping her. In this life, I had to let go of trying to help and respect what others chose for themselves. By the time I got home, everyone in the village knew that Sarah was going to marry her no-good ex-boyfriend. But Sarah herself hadn't come back yet. She had only called her mother and said she was giving up the interview and marrying him. Her mother fainted as soon as she heard. My mother, when she heard the news, sighed deeply, saying, "Just look at that girl, Sarah. She's getting married already. Son, you should forget about her. It's clear you two aren't meant to be together." Seeing my worried face, my mother thought I was still in love with Sarah and gently tried to comfort me. Sarah and I had grown up together. When we were kids, she would always be around me, following me and calling me Tom in a sweet little voice. The villagers often joked about us, saying, "These two are so close. Maybe Sarah will marry Tom when she grows up." As we got older and went to high school, seeing Sarah become a beautiful young woman, I felt shy when I heard that same joke again. That was when I realized I liked this girl who had been by my side all this time. Throughout high school, I tried to hide my strong feelings and just stayed by her. I would bring her lunch, remind her to wear more clothes, and help her with her schoolwork. Then we both got into the same university. Her bright youth was amazing, and she really made my teenage years special. But after starting university, before I could tell her how I felt, I found out Sarah had already fallen for someone else. Sarah had fallen for Mike, a troublemaker from the vocational school nearby. One night, while Sarah was walking back to school, a pervert followed her, and Mike, who was smoking around the corner, saved her and started trying hard to get her to go out with him. Sarah, who had always been a good girl, was quickly drawn to Mike's rebellious personality. She started missing classes, drinking, going to bars, and even failed some of her classes by the end of the first semester. I had tried to talk to her about it, but she was tired after a night out with Mike and said impatiently, "Tom, why are you always telling me what to do? I worked so hard to get into college. What's wrong with relaxing a little?" Looking at her face, now covered in heavy makeup, the thick eyeliner hiding her innocent look, I couldn't see the girl she used to be anymore. When we first started college, she had told me, "Tom, let's promise to study hard and get into graduate school together. We'll still be classmates then." But that girl who said those words was gone. I realized I might lose Sarah forever. In the end, after graduating from university, I followed our plan and got into graduate school. Sarah, however, had failed too many classes and had gotten a warning because she missed so much school, almost not graduating. It was only because I begged the school and helped her make up the courses that she barely managed to get her diploma. Later, Mike cheated on her and broke up with her. After being sad and quiet for a while, Sarah finally decided to try for a civil service job. She had always been smart and worked hard, so if she tried, the exam wouldn't be too hard for her. Just like when we were kids, she asked for my help to prepare for the exam. Seeing her finally decide to leave Mike and get her life back on track made me happy, so I did everything I could to help her, finding all the study materials she needed. In the end, she got the best score on the written exam and moved on to the interview stage. The night before the interview, she was both nervous and excited, asking if I could go with her on the day of the interview. She said, "Tom, if you're with me, I won't be so nervous." I smiled and agreed, seeing her face so clear in my memories, and said I would go with her. The rain was heavy that day, and to avoid being late, I drove her to the interview. But once again, nothing I did could compare to the power of a call from Mike. Even my life wasn't as important as a single hair on his head. This time she gave up half a year of hard work and the advantage of having the best score on the written exam, all to chase after her love. Watching her slowly disappear into the rain, I took a deep breath. It was better this way. From now on, we would live our own lives. With my face looking calm, I returned home. But I hadn't expected her mother to come knocking so soon. I was changing a light bulb in my room when I heard her loud shouting at the door. She angrily yelled, "Tom, get out here! You're going to explain yourself today." I frowned and went out, and my mom, holding some clean clothes, looked at Sarah's mother in surprise and asked, "Mrs. Liu, what's going on?" To my surprise, Sarah's mother roughly pushed my mom, causing her to stumble, and the laundry basket fell with a loud crash, clothes scattering everywhere. I rushed over to help my mom and pick up the clothes, my voice cold as I said, "Huntuk, Mrs. Liu, what are you doing?" She put her hands on her hips, glaring at me as she demanded, "I want to know right now, did you tell Sarah to give up the interview? She's gone running back to that no-good guy. Why didn't you stop her? Are you trying to ruin her life? I trusted you to take care of Sarah. You're going to destroy our family." Sarah's mother began crying loudly, easily blaming me for Sarah giving up the interview. My mother's eyes widened, and she defended me. "Mrs. Liu, what are you talking about? Tom isn't that kind of person." I stood behind my mother and calmly said to Mrs. Liu, "Mrs. Liu, you've got it wrong. It was Mike who called Sarah. It was Sarah's phone, And if she wanted to answer, how could I stop her? Seeing Mrs. Liu acting so upset, I smirked and started to make things up, saying, "As for why Sarah gave up the interview, isn't it all because of you?" Mrs. Liu's eyes widened in disbelief. "What nonsense are you saying? How could it be because of me?" I continued, "You didn't want Sarah to be with Mike. You thought he was just a punk. Sarah said that if she passed the job interview, you would oppose them even more, so she decided to give up the interview at the last minute." Mrs. Liu was so shocked by this ridiculous excuse that she couldn't say anything. Meanwhile, because Mrs. Liu was shouting so loudly, a few neighbors had gathered outside the door and were gossiping. One person said, "Lady, you really shouldn't be interfering in the children's affairs." Another said, "Yeah, even if Sarah did something wrong, it's not Tom's fault. Why are you causing a scene at his house?" Mrs. Liu's face turned red with embarrassment as she glared at me, muttering curses under her breath as she walked away. She said, "When that girl comes back, I'll break her legs." The incident slowly faded, but to my surprise, 3 months later, Sarah came back. And Mike came with her. Mike, who had managed to charm Sarah, was indeed quite handsome. He had that rebellious bad boy look, the kind of guy who would make the good girl blush in a romance movie. Sarah was close to Mike, smiling sweetly, but also nervously. We met at the village entrance, and Sarah's eyes lit up when she saw me. She said, "Tom, this is Mike." Mike smirked in a way that showed off, his eyes full of disrespect and pride, and said, "You're the brother who grew up with Sarah, right? She's mentioned you before. Sorry, but Sarah and I are getting married." He emphasized the word sorry, like he had won something. Hearing that, I was a little surprised. They were in such a hurry to get married, but they didn't even have proper jobs. How could they afford a wedding? Then Sarah shyly smiled and touched her stomach, saying, "I'm pregnant, 5 weeks along. That's why we want to get married first." A wave of emotions hit me. Sarah was pregnant again, even though she had already lost 4 pregnancies with Mike before. They had only been together for 4 years, and she had miscarried 4 times. Each time, I was the one who took her to the hospital. The last time we went, the doctor had looked at me, frustrated, saying, "You two are such troublemakers. If there's a next time, she might not even be able to have children." He thought I was Sarah's boyfriend and scolded me harshly. But now Sarah was pregnant with Mike's child again. My eyes went to Sarah's belly, and I couldn't help but feel a deep, indescribable sadness. If this child survived, it might have an even harder life than the ones that were lost before. A mother who was blinded by love, a father who was always in debt, a grandmother obsessed with money, and a broken home waiting to happen. Yes, Mike still owed money and had been banned by the bank for not paying back his loans. He was a deadbeat. I wanted to force a smile, but I couldn't. Instead, I calmly congratulated them. "You're going to be parents. Congratulations." I walked past them, wondering how Sarah had managed to convince her mother. On my way back from my grandma's house at the east end of the village, I happened to walk by Sarah's house. It was very lively inside, with a big party set up in the yard. Mrs. Liu was excitedly making arrangements, saying, "Oh, I knew my son-in-law would become successful. He's driving a BMW now, ha ha ha. Our Sarah has always been outstanding since she was little. You two make a great couple." Only then did I notice a BMW parked in front of their house. Mike sneered and said, "Mom, go ahead and spend that 200,000 yuan bride price. Sarah won't have to suffer being with me." Hearing that, Mrs. Liu's face wrinkled with joy, and she kept saying, "Good, good." She added, "I told you from the beginning not to let Sarah go for that civil service exam. She should have just married Mike. It's that Tom kid from next door who influenced her. Well, now I can relax knowing you two are getting married." Looking at Mrs. Liu's greedy, money-driven expression, I wasn't surprised at all. But I was curious about how Mike had suddenly become so rich, driving a BMW and giving Mrs. Liu 200,000 yuan all at once. When Mrs. Liu saw me walking by the door, she waved and called out, "Hey, isn't that the Tom kid? Come on in and have a meal with us." She smiled smugly. I smiled faintly and said, "No, thank you, Mrs. Liu. My mom's waiting for me at home." Mrs. Liu pretended to be disappointed, saying, "All right, what a shame. You'll miss out on these dishes. My son-in-law paid a lot for these special dishes. If you ask me, what's the point of you getting a postgraduate degree? My daughter didn't go for postgraduate or the civil service exam, yet she found such a wealthy son-in-law." The next day, the news that Sarah was marrying Mike spread throughout the village. Mrs. Liu was telling everyone that her daughter was marrying a rich man. The bride price was 200,000 yuan, and he drove a BMW. I had a lot of questions, but I couldn't be bothered to find out more. After all, none of this mattered to me anymore. The holiday ended, and I was about to go to Sea City for work. Just before I left, Sarah came to see me off, but Mike stopped her. Mike said, "Why send him off? Come on, I'll take you for a spin around the village in my BMW." After that, I didn't know what happened. I only heard my mom on the phone saying that Sarah had gone to the city with Mike, and I assumed she was probably living a good life now. After finishing my postgraduate studies, I got a job at one of the top 3 hospitals in Sea City. My father had passed away from heart disease, so becoming a doctor had always been my dream. Back in my senior year of high school, I wrote on my goal card that I wanted to be a doctor who saves lives and heals the wounded, and now that dream had come true. I remembered the late-night study sessions during our senior year when Sarah, with her bright eyes, had asked me, "Tom, what's your goal? Let's swap and see." On her goal card, her neat handwriting said she wanted to become a judge, upholding justice. And now, we had both grown up. The girl who used to pass me little notes during evening study sessions was no longer there. One day, I went to the obstetrics and gynecology department to give car keys to my college classmate, David. Just as I turned the corner by the stairs, I saw a familiar figure. At the department entrance, Sarah was holding Mike's arm. Mike, on the other hand, had a frown on his face as he smoked in the hallway. There were pregnant women around, all of them giving Mike disapproving looks. A young nurse coldly told Mike, "Sir, please smoke in the designated smoking area. Smoking is prohibited here." Mike gave the nurse a look of disdain and lazily replied, "Who are you to tell me what to do? I'll smoke wherever I want." The nurse's face turned bright red with anger, and she said, "This is a hospital, and there are pregnant women here. Please respect the rules." Sarah, defending Mike, arrogantly said, "I'm pregnant too. If I can smell it, why can't they?" The nurse was stunned and didn't know what to say. In the end, it was the husband of another pregnant woman who stepped in to stop Mike. He was very tall, and his intimidating presence made Mike back off, walking away looking defeated. Sarah hurried after him. Mike said, "I told you to come by yourself, but you didn't listen. What good is it with me here? You're driving me crazy," he grumbled, his tone harsh. Sarah's eyes were filled with sadness, but she patted her belly and still put up with it, trying to keep up with him as she held his arm. "What are you looking at?" David patted me on the shoulder, bringing me back to reality. I turned my gaze away, smiled, and said, "Nothing." David, knowing that I knew Sarah, looked away from her and sighed. "Your childhood friend, don't even get me started. Her uterine wall is as thin as paper now. It's questionable whether this pregnancy will last. Can you believe she's with someone like him? Earlier, in the maternity checkup room, she looked so impatient. She was scared of the checkup, but had to calm him down at the same time." I silently put the keys into his pocket and calmly replied, "Respect people's choices. Maybe they're happy the way they are." I thought I wouldn't see Sarah again, but to my surprise, I ran into her again when I went downstairs to grab a coffee at noon. Mike was walking ahead with his hands in his pockets, striding across the hall, while Sarah was running behind him, looking through her medical records, her hair a bit messy. When she saw me, a trace of awkwardness flashed across her face, and she said, "Tom, you work here?" I gave a faint, and glanced at her medical records, asking, "Everything all right?" "Talking about her baby." Sarah smiled sweetly and said, "The baby's healthy." Mike scoffed, a look of disdain on his face. "So you're a little doctor, huh?" Sarah suddenly seemed to remember something and spoke with a slight tone of dissatisfaction. "Tom, the nurses at your hospital really have no manners. A little nurse dared to tell my husband what to do." I looked at her in confusion, and she continued, "She actually stopped my husband from smoking. It's a public space, not her house. Who is she to interfere? I bet she was just trying to flirt with my husband because he's good-looking." I silently sneered. She knew it was a public place, especially an obstetrics and gynecology department. I replied, "Don't you know smoking isn't allowed in hospitals? You're both educated people. At least try to follow the rules." Mike caught the subtle insult and arrogantly retorted, "Who's uneducated? What, are you a doctor now, acting all high and mighty?" I didn't even look at Mike. Instead, I turned to Sarah and asked, "Are you still preparing for the civil service exam? You have a good foundation." Sarah's eyes flickered slightly as she replied, "I've put it off for now. Studying too hard isn't good for the baby, and my husband doesn't want me to be so stressed." She awkwardly tugged at Mike's sleeve and said, "We'll be going now, Tom." Watching the two of them walk away together, I took a sip of my cold, bitter coffee. It was as expected. Everyone has their own path in life. Maybe. We once shared the same dreams for the future, but Sarah had met Mike and stopped in her tracks. Although Mike wasn't someone worth trusting with her life, it was still her choice. I looked at the academic conference invitation on my phone and smiled. At least I wasn't her. I wouldn't stop moving forward, and I wouldn't forget the dreams I once had. It had been a year since I last returned to my hometown. In that year, I had spent some time studying abroad and had learned a lot. This time, I came back just in time for my cousin's wedding. Before the wedding, I went to a gathering with some childhood friends. The table was full of familiar faces, friends I had grown up with. As we all grew older, we went our separate ways, started families, and built careers. It was rare that we could all get together like this, so it was quite lively. Someone said, "Tom went abroad for a year, and he's so much more serious now, ha ha ha." Among us, only Tom stayed true to his path, continuing his studies in healthcare. Look at me. I had to take the exam twice before I finally got in. I didn't say much, just quietly listened as everyone joked around, humorously talking about the difficulties of these past years. Then someone asked, "By the way, how is Sarah doing? It's been so many years since we've seen her. Her story about giving up the interview after ranking first in the civil service exam is still being talked about in our department." The person speaking had taken the same exam as Sarah and had successfully gotten in because Sarah had opted out. Another person chimed in, "For a man, that's like a god falling in a battle of gods. Tom, you're closest to Sarah. Do you have any news about her?" My hand trembled slightly as I poured the tea, and I replied with a smile, "I haven't been in contact with her for a year, so I'm not really sure." At that moment, my cousin, who had just come in with sunflower seeds, overheard and leaned in, saying, "Did you guys mention Sarah?" "Oh, you wouldn't know if you haven't been back. She got scammed. That guy dumped her, and she had to abort an 8-month-old baby." I tightened my grip on the teacup, and everyone was shocked. Someone asked, "Wasn't she married to a rich guy? I heard the dowry was more than 200,000. My cousin waved her hand, her expression complicated as she replied, "Pfft, that 200,000? The guy borrowed the money. He's a deadbeat. He couldn't get any more loans, so he tricked Sarah into taking out loans using her ID. Now Sarah's been dumped and owes a huge amount of debt. She can't pay it off, and she's been blacklisted. She can't even take the civil service exam anymore. I never expected that the money Mike used to show off in front of Sarah's mother was all borrowed. It was only then that I learned from my cousin that Mike had delayed their marriage registration, tricking Sarah into waiting until after the baby was born to do it. But just 3 months later, he cheated again, this time scamming an innocent college girl. When Sarah found out, she was heartbroken, completely seeing Mike for who he was, and decided to break up and start a new life. But then Mike dropped a bombshell. He had already taken out over $5 million in loans using Sarah's ID on various loan platforms. That $5 million was spent on gambling, keeping a mistress, buying luxury cars, and other personal expenses. Not a penny of it went to Sarah. Sarah's family couldn't pay off that much debt, and in the end, she became a defaulter. My cousin said, "Tom, Sarah's mom even came to your house to cause trouble." I frowned. My mom had never told me about this. She continued, "I knew Auntie didn't tell you. Sarah's mother insisted that you lend money to Sarah to pay off the debt. When Sarah couldn't get through to you, she caused a scene at your house." No wonder she couldn't reach me. After we parted ways at the hospital, I had blocked all of her contact details, thinking that we would never have any connection again. Everyone was murmuring in surprise. The once bright Sarah now seemed covered in dust, likely trapped in the mud for the rest of her life. The next day, when I went out to buy breakfast, I ran into Sarah. When I saw her standing in front of me, I could hardly believe my eyes. She looked at least 10 years older. Her once shiny black hair was now dry and frizzy. Her face looked tired, and dark circles were under her eyes. Now, looking heavier, she was helping out at her mother's breakfast shop. When she saw me, she froze for a moment, and then a little bit of light appeared in her eyes. Sarah's mother, spotting me, was overjoyed. It was as if she saw the person who would take the blame. She warmly greeted me, saying, "Oh, Tom is back. You've really done well for yourself these years. Sarah's always talking about you. Come on, catch up." Sarah's mother nudged Sarah with her elbow, telling her to talk to me. A year had passed since we last sat down together, and now we calmly chatted. I learned that Sarah had wanted to take the civil servant exam while pregnant, but Mike had constantly stopped her. Still, Sarah secretly signed up, and with her good foundation, she studied for a month and went to take the exam. But halfway through, Mike called her, saying he had gotten into an accident while racing with friends and urgently needed Sarah to come to the hospital to take care of him. And just like that, Sarah turned around, missing another chance. Sarah cried and tightly grabbed my hand, saying in a choked voice, "Tom, I really have no way out. I'm a defaulter, buried in debt, sob, sob, sob." I silently pulled my hand away and handed her a cup of warm water. I said, "We're adults now. The path you choose is your own." She had many chances to turn back, but she chose the most disastrous path. Unexpectedly, Sarah wiped away her tears and suddenly said, "Tom, have you always liked me?" My forehead twitched. I had a bad feeling about this. Sure enough, the next second, Sarah said, "Tom, will you marry me? I'm willing to be with you now. I've let go of Mike. I know you've always liked me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have kept telling me to leave him." Looking at Sarah's eyes, filled with calculation, I suddenly felt everything had changed. There was no going back. I frowned and coldly replied, "You're mistaken. I advised you to leave Mike because I knew he wasn't a good man." Sarah grew anxious. She asked, "Isn't it true you've always liked me? Why won't you admit it?" I put down the teacup and replied calmly, "The feelings of youth faded a long time ago. Sarah, we're adults now. We should take responsibility for our actions." I picked up my coat, intending to leave, but once again Sarah grabbed my sleeve. She gritted her teeth and spoke, "Then help me with one last thing. You're at the hospital. Can you help me get a marriage health checkup form?" I looked at her puzzled. Sarah looked ashamed but told the truth. She had had 5 abortions and was no longer able to have children. Abortion would be recorded on the health checkup report, showing the number of past pregnancies. She could hide her debt, but she couldn't fake the health report. The last time she went on a blind date, the man had agreed to the dowry, but when he saw the health checkup report, he immediately turned around and left. Looking at Sarah, I realized this person had completely fallen apart. I said, "I don't have that kind of authority. You can't find any loopholes in this." Seeing that I wasn't helping her, Sarah stood up and screamed, "Do you have no responsibility for what I've become? If Mike hadn't called me back then, and if you had stopped me, I wouldn't be where I am now. Why didn't you stop me back then?" I stopped and looked seriously at Sarah's twisted face, asking in return, "If I had stopped you back then, and you and Mike never got together, would you hate me?" Sarah replied, "Of course not. If you had stopped me, I wouldn't be in this situation, at least not like this. Tom, you're to blame too. You should take responsibility for my life." Hearing her say that, I almost laughed out loud. In my previous life, before I died, Sarah's hateful words still seemed to echo in my ears. She said, "You ruined my love. I want you to go to hell." Without hesitation, she pushed me into the river, laughing with delight on the shore. Even when she found out I had hung up on her, she never stopped hating me. She caused a ruckus at my house, smashing everything. She even went to the hospital, questioning how I was qualified to be a doctor. And now she confidently said she wouldn't hate me and that I should take responsibility for her life. How ridiculous. She had always treated me as a backup, always knowing that I had once liked her. That's why she felt so entitled to use my feelings. But now, her supposed backup was gone. I got into my car without looking back and drove off slowly. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sarah's mother rushing out from the yard, slapping Sarah's arm, yelling, "You useless thing! Didn't you say Tom always liked you? Who else could marry you? Who else could pay off your debts?" Without a second glance, I drove away, leaving Sarah behind, collapsing into tears. On my cousin's wedding day, I was surprised to see Sarah there. She had made an effort to look nice, wearing delicate makeup, and for a moment she looked like the confident and lively woman she once was. But the sparkle in her eyes was long gone. My cousin had met her husband while traveling. She had been hurt by a bad person in college and vowed never to trust men again, focusing on her studies instead, eventually getting both a master's and a PhD from a top university. Now she had a successful career and a happy marriage. In terms of looks and academic talent, my cousin wasn't as good as Sarah. She didn't even have as good of a bachelor's degree. But the difference in their lives, both in public and in private, spoke volumes. Sarah had ultimately wasted the good opportunities she had. After the wedding, I had to leave again. Since I started working, my hometown had become just a place to visit in the winter and summer, with no spring or autumn left in it for me. On the day I was leaving, Sarah was waiting for me at the door of my house. She hesitated, then said, "Tom, do you know any lawyer friends in Sea City? Could you introduce me to a job?" Looking at her fake innocence and the scheming look in her eyes, I knew she wasn't just going to Sea City for work. I couldn't risk passing on this unstable problem to my friends. I turned her down. But Sarah wouldn't give up. She said, "Tom, my mom is forcing me to go on blind dates again. She's trying to marry me off to some old man in the town." Sarah moved closer to me, her eyes full of longing, and said, "Tom, if you don't take me with you now, I'll never have another chance." She tried to hug me, but I frowned and pushed her away. Whether she went on a blind date or who she went on it with had nothing to do with me. Without looking back, I got in my car and drove away, leaving her thin figure standing alone in the wind. Later on, I settled in Sea City and started a new life. After work, I went to the gym, took pottery classes, Little things to make life more interesting. Through a colleague, I met a wonderful woman. She was completely different from Sarah. Bright, outgoing, and cheerful, and we got along well. As we were getting to know each other, Sarah's news reached me first. She was getting married again. My mother told me. Sarah's mother had forced her to go on blind dates and set her up with a man more than 10 years older. The man had been divorced with 2 children and didn't care that Sarah had had abortions. He just wanted a young, pretty woman who could take care of him and his kids. He gave her a dowry of 200,000 yuan, and Sarah's mother was very happy. Sarah changed her phone number and sent me a message saying she was marrying someone she didn't love, and it was painful. She said she was giving me one last chance and asked if I would take her out of her misery. I was speechless. Even now, she still acted like she was doing me a favor by giving me her love. I unblocked her on WeChat and, as expected, immediately received her friend request. She sent me a wedding invitation and wrote, "Tom, I always dreamed of wearing a wedding dress for you. Do you remember that wedding dress store we passed by when we were in high school?" I didn't give her a chance to keep playing on my emotions. I quickly sent her money as a wedding gift. I replied, "Wishing you happiness in your marriage, a lifetime of love." Immediately, Sarah sent me a video invitation, but I hung up right away. She sent me dozens of 60-second voice messages, which I didn't listen to. I blocked her again. I didn't want to go to Sarah's wedding, but on that day, I returned to my hometown. I really wanted to see how Sarah, who had gotten what she wanted, was now doing. The wedding was very simple. The old man's son and daughter were making a mess, spilling tea everywhere. The old man never planned to treat Sarah well. He just saw her as a young, pretty nanny for his household. So when she saw me, Sarah was extremely excited. Even during the wedding, she didn't want to exchange rings with the old man. It was only after he subtly threatened her that she reluctantly went through with the ceremony. During the toasts, when the old man wasn't looking, Sarah quietly came to my side, her eyes full of hope, as she asked, "Tom, are you here to take me away?" I smiled faintly at her, showing the ring on my finger, and said, "I'm already engaged. Sarah, congratulations on your marriage. As someone who watched you grow up, I'm truly happy for you." With every word I said, Sarah's face paled. She stared at the ring on my finger, not wanting to believe it, and muttered, "How could you be with someone else? Didn't you always like me?" Her eyes were filled with tears, her voice trembling. "Tom, I know you're just looking for a replacement for me. You still have a chance to take me away." I took a step back and began my bad guy speech, coldly replying, "I only see you as a sister. Please have some self-respect. The best wishes are delivered. I'll take my leave now." Sarah tried to pull me back, but she was suddenly yanked back by a strong force. The old man had appeared and was glaring at her furiously. He cursed at her. "You shameless woman. On your wedding day, you're here flirting with another man. I spent 200,000 yuan on you. You'd better behave yourself." The old man's son started crying after wetting himself, and Sarah had no choice but to swallow her anger and go comfort the child. At our high school's 70th anniversary reunion, many successful former students were invited back to visit. I was also on the guest list. When I returned to school, I saw many old classmates. After all these years, they had become leaders in their fields. I heard that Sarah was also invited, but the old man had forced her to stay home to take care of the children and forbidden her from attending. When this came up, the classmates sighed. Someone asked, "How did Sarah end up like this?" Another person said, "Back then, Tom and Sarah were childhood sweethearts. We all thought you two would end up together." "Yeah," someone else added. "I even saw the class beauty write a love letter to Tom in high school. I saw Sarah intercept it, declaring that he was hers." I was surprised. Had anyone really given me a love letter? I didn't remember. Seeing my confused look, the person continued, "Tom, you probably didn't know, but I saw it after gym class. The class beauty tried to slip a love letter into your desk, but Sarah stopped her and said you two would end up together." I smiled, realizing that Sarah knew everything. She knew I had always liked her, so she kept giving me mixed signals while pretending to be innocent, leading me on. She enjoyed my help and special treatment while also being unable to resist the temptations that came after university. How ridiculous. Luckily, the past with Sarah had faded, and it no longer stirred any emotions in me. While discussing our wedding plans with my fiancé, we went back to my hometown. My mom was overjoyed. During lunch, however, we heard Sarah's mother's angry shouts, mixed with the sound of a broken bowl coming from next door. After my fiancé left, my mom chatted with me about what had been happening recently, saying that Sarah's family had become a complete mess. My mom said, "Sarah's been really reckless. I heard she owes several million in debts. She's been in touch with her no-good ex again. She went out to meet him, leaving her 2 kids locked in the house. The son knocked over a kettle and got burned, and her husband came home and almost beat her to death." My mom shook her head as she spoke. Sarah had grown up under her watch, and seeing her fall so far made her feel some sympathy. Later, I heard that the old man had caught Sarah flirting with Mike and was threatening divorce, demanding that Sarah's family return the 200,000 yuan dowry. Not only did Sarah's family fail to return the money, but they also had to split 2 million yuan in divorce assets. The old man found out that Sarah was actually in debt for several million. He stormed to Sarah's family, smashing everything he could, and slapped Sarah's mother. He yelled, "You dared to join together to deceive me! This is a fraudulent marriage. I'm telling you that several million isn't our shared debt. I'm not giving you a cent, and you still need to return the 200,000 to me." At first, I thought this was a bit of entertainment. But to my surprise, this fire ended up burning me too. Sarah had actually lied to the old man, saying that the loans taken out by Mike were actually my responsibility. Before I left, the old man dragged Sarah to my house, demanding that I return the 200,000 yuan dowry to Sarah's family. He said, "Give me back the dowry and take this worthless daughter of yours back." I looked at Sarah, who was looking guilty, and sneered. "Is this how you told him?" She said, "Brother, after all these years, how could you let me suffer like this?" I replied, "Fine." Before she could say anything else, I nodded and said, "I'll go get the money. You wait here." Then, I brought the police into the house. When Sarah saw the police, her face immediately turned pale. I said, "The truth will be up to the police to investigate. First of all, I've never had any financial or emotional disputes with Miss Liu. Regarding your defamation and the extortion of 200,000 yuan from me, I reserve the right to pursue legal action." Seeing my stance, the old man finally understood and quickly started to smile at the police, then turned to Sarah and said with a vicious tone, "You filthy woman, if you dare to deceive me, I'll beat you to death." 3 days after the police filed the case, the old man returned home in a fury, only to find Sarah gone. Neighbors said that Sarah packed up and ran off with a tall man the night before. After checking the security footage, it turned out to be Mike. The old man cursed his luck, feeling like his 200,000 yuan had gone down the drain. Under the police's orders, he had to come and apologize to me. I thought this incident was over, that Sarah would no longer appear in my life. But to my surprise, 6 months later, a murder case made headlines. The man had fallen into massive debt and forced the woman to do terrible things to pay it off. The woman resisted and was beaten. The woman, nearly beaten to death, tried to call the police but was stabbed 3 times by the man. Sarah was rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, she survived, but the damage was severe. She became paralyzed and had nerve damage. Knowing that Mike was a dangerous person, She still went back to him without hesitation. Now, this was the result she deserved. The case gained widespread attention, and after Mike was caught, many of his previous wrongdoings were brought to light, leading to him being sentenced to life in prison. When I went to visit Sarah in the hospital, she had lost so much weight she hardly looked human, and she was extremely agitated when she saw me. She hoarsely said, "Are you here to laugh at me? It's all because of you. Why didn't you stop me when I interviewed you back then? Even if you didn't, why didn't you marry me when I begged you?" She blamed me for her own mistakes, her ruined life, and now expected me to take responsibility. Even now, she was still unwilling to face the truth and blamed others. I nodded. Yes, I was there to see what had happened to her. She took a life, caused my family to suffer the pain of losing a son. How could I forgive her? Now, seeing her end up like this, I finally felt that the anger that had been in my heart for so long had gone away. I said, "A person like you would never appreciate it, even if I had. Helped you in the past. Admit it, Sarah, you're selfish. What happened today is all because of your own actions." When I left the hospital, it started to drizzle. My new wife was waiting for me with an umbrella not far away. I smiled and walked toward her. My future was ahead of me.